Hello. Hi. Hello to anybody who's here early. Hello, Mr. Taco and Ed. Welcome. Tonight we're gonna do the usual stream at more or less the usual hour. And hello, Bug. Uh, like an hour or maybe an hour and a half from now. But right now we're gonna start restoring our episode 1 finale because we lost the VOD. For anybody who's watching this VOD, welcome uh, from like, oh god, 5 months in the future. Yeah, the bot was lost, so I have to record it again, and this is gonna be the beginning of that. So I won't waste a lot of time with the intro. Uh, and I'll start right away. I'm gonna avoid doing any sort of anachronisms. I'm not gonna mention any spoilers. Hello, Vampy. And all of the assets that I may or may not do in later will not show up right now, so as to not to spoil you for that. I didn't find my old PNG, so instead I'm using the semi-related one that I made during the Ocarina of Time special. This one, the gazebo, because there's the Umineko outfits right there. I don't remember if this is anachronistic. If it is, it's like less than a week in the future. So look forward to that. Unless you've already seen it, in which case, hello, here it is again. I removed the funny transparent layer so you could see the chat properly. Okay, now, let's get to it. First off, this is actually right where the last spot ended. I nailed the spots. I have it saved right here. First off, let's do a little recap for those who are also in the future with me. We're back in episode 1. These are all the characters that we know. Kinzo disappeared from the stud. We haven't seen him since then. 8 people have died. Kraus, Rudolph, Kirie, Rosa, and Goda died on the first Twilight, which is what they call the first big murder that happened. Then, during the second Twilight, when 2 people died, it was Shannon and it was... No, that's my bad. Shannon isn't the first Twilight. So Shannon, Goda, Rosa, Rudolph, Kirie, and Kraus. And then in the second Twilight, it was Eva and Hideyoshi. Yes. And the way they died is different. Okay? So we're currently there. I'm not going to be doing the same voices that I was doing back then because I don't remember what they were. Gazebo's a bit out of the frame, I know. But I don't want to move the... I don't want to move it because if I move it, then I'm going to have to move it when I bring the new PNG back. And that's too much work. Too much trouble. I'm trying not to move the scene too much. Yeah, I don't remember what voice I was doing for Natsui, so I'm gonna do the new one. Sorry to anybody who's surprised by this. At any rate, we'll lock this room and leave everything as it is until the police come. No objections, I take it? Natsuhi announced it as though she didn't care whether they agreed or not. If anyone had a right to object, it would have been George, but he looked as though he'd shed enough tears. George nodded slightly, still facing away from the others, and when he stood up, everyone else agreed too. Natsuhi still hadn't opened that western envelope of the family head that she'd picked up. But now that they'd decided to leave this room, she decided to unseal it in the parlor, where everyone could watch. As soon as they walked out into the hallway to head back to the parlor, some of them immediately felt something out of place. Or maybe sense something strange. Ugh, stinks. Ah, did you notice it too, Maria? Seriously, what's that smell? It's awful. When everyone sniffed the air, they did notice a horrible burnt smell drifting through the hallway, one that none of them had smelled until then. I will go quickly to check the kitchen. I'm sure I turned the flame off. After noticing a burnt smell, it was natural that Kumasawa, who had just been using the burner in the kitchen, suspected that her own slip-up had caused it. Kumasawa hastily dashed away. Kanon, go with Kumasawa. Do not let her be alone. Yes. After nodding at Genji's order, Kanon followed after her. He wasn't running, but as he followed her, he tried to search for the cause of the smell in other directions as well. Ugh, it stinks. Ugh. It truly is a stench that makes the nose wrinkle. However, that doesn't mean we can just open a window for ventilation. Natsuki was reluctant to open the windows in a situation where self-defense was so important. Let us run the fan. I do not believe there will be any need to open the windows. George Aniki, is it okay if I talk to you? If it's about finding the culprits, then I have no problems. It seemed that George had managed to climb out of the abyss of sorrow. All that filled his chest now was the quiet flame of hatred towards the culprit who had stolen the lives of the one he loved and his beloved parents. The chain for this room was set. From what I could tell by looking at it, I'm positive that it couldn't be opened from the outside. In other words, this was a perfect closed room. That does seem to be the case. In the case of the Rose Garden storehouse, they might have sneaked the shutter's key out of the servant room. Or maybe they had a duplicate key. I can imagine many ways they could have done it. But this chain is different. Among generally used locking techniques, a chain is the simplest one to create a closed room with. Only a chain will block everyone coming from the outside as long as it isn't physically broken. So, does this mean the culprit couldn't have gone in or out through the door? That's interesting. Just a few hours ago, it seemed to remember everyone making a fuss over how to enter a room without using the door. Back then, we were all losing our cool, wondering how grandfather had disappeared from his room. The receipt Tanteba stuck in the room on a whim proved that the door had remained sealed. And since Natsuki was the only person to enter or exit during that time, she was under suspicion. Anteba proposed a theory about how Aunt Natsuki might have thrown grandfather out the window and left by the door herself. But this door is much simpler. It was sealed from the inside by the door chain. The window had also been locked from the inside, and the bodies had been inside the room. This time it really had been, without exaggeration, a true closed room. That's right. If you include grandfather's disappearance, 3 cases have occurred, and all 3 times, the door has been the point of interest. The first was the shutter. There was a key in the servant room, and if we assume someone knew about that, this can't really be called a closed room. The next was the door sealed by the receipt. However, Aunt Natsuki entered that room, so if grandfather had left through the window, or been thrown out, she would have been able to lock the window before escaping. Or, like my theory, grandfather could have hidden until the receipt was gone and left the room later. Basically, this door can be defeated with a handful of desperate tricks. In that sense, you really can't call this one a closed room either. And now, we have the door sealed with the door chain. Finally, we have to give up. The window, the door, everything had been locked. It was a perfect closed room. The first hadn't been a closed room because everyone could be suspected. The second hadn't been a closed room because Aunt Natsuki could be suspected. But this time, no one can be suspected. This was a perfect closed room, because the door chain formed a seal that blocked everyone equally well. In that case, did the culprit carry out the crime without entering the room? With some method from outside the room? Good point. Even though the chain makes it impossible to open it wide enough for a person to fit through, you can open it a small crack. Did the culprit knock on the door to make them peer out before attacking them? Wait, am I missing something? Yeah, you are. If Aunt Eva's body had been lying right next to the door, then it might have been possible. She was on the bed at the back of the room, and Uncle Hideyoshi was even in the bathroom. Looking from the crack in the door, you couldn't even see them. And you couldn't reach them with your hands either. Damn it. It's all useless. I don't have a clue. Something was tugging softly at my sleeve. It was Maria. Ugh. Satisfied? What do you mean, satisfied? Battler, since you didn't want to suspect any of the relatives, you made a wish, saying you wanted the culprit to be Beatrice, right? Well, Beatrice granted that wish. Just as you asked, she did something that was completely impossible for a human to make you believe in the witch. And now you're complaining. How selfish. Ouch! I tapped Maria, who was laughing unpleasantly, on the head with my fist. Sure, thanks for granting that wish. That just now was to thank you. And also to teach you to stop laughing when it's inappropriate. More importantly, tell me. There was another mysterious scribble on the door to Aunt Eva and Uncle Hideyoshi's room. Was that another magic circle? That one had a really memorable and characteristic design, so I'd hope you'd at least know what it was. Ouch. I don't know, which is why I'm letting you take the credits. Quit whining and explain. You are sure are violent, Battler. I won't tell you if you're too mean, get it? Ouch. Oh, I'll say it, stop hitting me. That's the first magic circle of the moon. What does it mean? What is this magic circle's effect? What does this Hebrew writing mean? The words are from the Old Testament, Psalms 107 verse 16. For he who has broken gates of brass and cut through bars of iron. This magic circle has two effects. First, it can open a door regardless of which method has been used to lock it. That sure is convenient. So you're saying they're trying to make it look like they're a witch, because this closed room has a door that can't be opened without relying on magic. And the other effect? When you're blocked by unopenable doors in all directions, it opens a door. By using it in a difficult situation, it gives you a solution you haven't even thought of until then. Generally speaking, you receive the powers of observation and discernment, inspiration and intuition. Beatrice is trying to provoke you, since there's no way lowly humans like Battler could figure out how this door was opened. Ouch! Okay, good work, so shut up. Sounds great, I'll accept this challenge from the witch. Maria-chan, things like witches and demons don't exist in this world. Someone killed father and mother. I don't know whether that was someone I know or not, but either way, it was definitely a human. Yeah, but how? Hello, Fire Mountain. This is a PNG from the Zelda special, from the Ep special, when I made the gazebo. And because I couldn't find my old PNG, so I'm using this one. Because I don't want to do too many anachronisms here. You might notice that my funny image in the corner is no longer there because of that. Also, I think I already made one. Yeah, the thing is called Dawn of the Golden Witch, which is not the name of this episode. Whoops. This episode is Legend of the Golden Witch. There we go. It couldn't have been more than 10 centimeters wide. At any rate, I can hardly stand the stench. What in the world could it be? Kanon and Kumasawa, who had gone on ahead, realized the smell wasn't coming from the kitchen even before they arrived there. That was because they noticed an even thicker wave of stench rising up from the stairs leading to the basement, which they passed on their way to the kitchen. The boiler room. I wonder if there's something wrong with the boiler again. Those stairs led to the underground boiler room. The mansion's boiler was old and in poor condition. Both of them had witnessed problems with the boiler on several occasions, but they had never smelled the boiler belching out a stench like this before. Hang on, let me lower the volume a little bit for myself. There. Slam. What was that sound? The thing they heard from the basement was definitely the sound of a door closing. Kumasawa had phrased it as a question, but she already knew it couldn't be anything else. Kumasawa was so surprised at the sound that her knees gave way yet again and she cowered. After all, at that very moment, no one could have been in the boiler room. Just a few seconds ago, everyone had been crowded together around Deva and Hideyoshi's room. So who caused the sound of a door closing just now? Kanon-san. After taking a second to sort out the situation, Kanon ran down towards the basement. Since they'd heard the sound of a door closing just now, there was no sign of anyone coming up the stairs. The person who'd closed the door had to be inside the boiler room now. If the boiler room had been a dead end, Kanon would have rushed in so hastily. But Kanon was a servant, so he knew. There were two entrances to the boiler room. One that opened to the mansion, and one that opened to the courtyard. If he didn't chase them now, they might slip away. Kumasawa reached the same conclusion long after Kanon did. But she couldn't let him go alone. The thing in the boiler room was the culprits. An opponent who had easily killed 6 adults in the first murder. Then, no matter how Kanon confronted them, he wouldn't be a match. Of course, with his arguments. Even if Kumasawa joined him, it wouldn't change anything. At any rate, after a delay, Kumasawa decided that she mustn't let Kanon go alone, and she rushed down the stairs. At that time, Kanon was already in the boiler room. The boiler room's characteristic damp heat tormented him. It had always been an unpleasantly smelly and hot place. And on top of that, the room was full of that horrible stench, which made Kanon feel like he was going to be sick. There was no doubt that this room was the source. In that case, Kanon should have been searching for where the smell was coming from. However, Kanon kept gazing straight forward as he grabbed the hatchet from a tool shelf just off to the side of the door. He hadn't stretched out his hand because he'd wanted a hatchet. He had wanted to grab a weapon. Any weapon. Why? Kanon gazed into the darkness where the naked light bulb couldn't pierce. Then he answered. In roulette, you bet on another number of the colors, red or black, buying for a payoff. However, low-risk bets like black and red only offer a similarly low payoff. The words coming from Kanon's mouth were swallowed up by the darkness. That darkness suddenly started to swirl, glittering. It was such a fantastical scene. Golden, sparkling butterflies that hid in the shadows all over the boiler room flapped their wings, twinkling beautifully, and gathered in the darkness, disappearing. Cannon continued speaking, directing his words at the darkness as it swallowed the butterflies up. But as the butterflies gathered in the darkness, they perhaps, probably, no, they would certainly laugh. But Cannon continued to speak without faltering in the slightest. However, if you bet on something with a lower probability, your payoff increases proportional to the risk. The master called succeeding despite an astronomical risk a miracle, and called the astronomical payoff gain as a result magic. I have no interest in what kind of magic you and the master were seeking when you spun that roulette. But you forgot something. You forgot that in roulette, there's a pocket that's neither black nor red. Roulette has a special pocket called zero, which means that the house takes everything in certain variants of the game. This means that all of the coins bet on the table will be swept up, just as though everyone has forfeits. I set my heart on just one thing. I decided that if Shannon were to be killed, and if I was left alive, I'd sacrifice this life of mine and bring this roulette of yours to ruin. This isn't one of the master's rules, and it certainly isn't one of yours. I made this rule myself. I'm not furniture anymore. I'm the zero on your roulette. Cannon's face twisted with humiliation. It was clear that his defiance against his own weaknesses was being ridiculed somehow. Cannon's brow creased even further, and a fierce expression that he'd never shown to anyone appeared on his face. The hand grasping the hatchet was shaking. His sweat became drops, which slid downward. It was clear that the emotion causing Cannon's hand to shake wasn't just anger. However, Cannon suppressed that emotion. I won't let your words lead me astray again. This is where the demon's roulette ends. Wait another 1,000 years in hell for your next summoner, Beatorice! When Cannon raised the hatchet and tried to dive into the darkness definitely sneered. It sneered at that courage as if it were vulgar, lazy, futile, and meaningless. Cannon, his hatchet still aloft, couldn't take another step after that. With a clang, the hatchet that had been grasping fell and rolled on the floor. And following that, with a pair of thuds, Cannon's knees hit left, then right. That hand, which looked like it was trying to catch the sky, now that the hatchet had been dropped, gradually lowered, landing on his chest. Then, the other hand did the same. Right there was a handle with a demonic design engraved in it. As Cannon looked down at his chest, the same type of weapon that had been stabbed into Eva and Hideyoshi's forehead was... Cannon was curled up in anguish, fresh blood dripping from the corner of his mouth. Cannon! No! It was makeup to extreme for Cannon's white skin. Around this scene, the glittering gold butterflies danced through the darkness, mesmerizing. It was a beautiful, beautiful dance. A funeral march of tributes, ridicule, and contempt for a single-voiced self-sacrifice. Ganon had already been prepared for his own death. But although he could do nothing but accept the death he had received, he attempted one last measure of resistance. He grasped the handle of the weapon sticking into his chest with both hands, and gritting his teeth with an acute, unearthly pain, he pulled it out. For only a moment, a bright red spray gushed out. It made an unpleasant bloop sound. It probably resembled the sound of Ganon's soul as it was sucked into the swamp of the dead. Ganon-san! Someone! Kumasawa screamed at the incomprehensible sight in front of her. Ganon was lying in a pool of blood. Kumasawa's heart was a complete mess. Ah, what a horrible fate. He wouldn't have been killed if I had been with him. Ah, what incredible luck. If I had been with him, I might have been killed too. As she screamed, her expression was filled with complete confusion, and all of the muscles of her face were pulled up, almost as though she was smiling while crying. But no one could have made fun of an expression like this. What is it, Kumasawa? Answer me, Kumasawa! The first one to dash in was Natsuhi, holding the rifle. Battler and Genji dashed in after her. Normally, they probably would have started discussing the origin of that violent stench filling the boiler room. But after they saw Ganon, who was lying on the ground as if he were drowning in an ocean of his own blood, the stench wasn't important anymore. Ganon! Answer me! Genji, bring Dr. Nanjo here! Natsuhi realized that even though Ganon was on the verge of death, he was still conscious, so she sent Genji to get the doctor. Natsuhi, holding the rifle aloft, faced the darkness in the center of the boiler room and shouted, Who is hiding over there? Come out quietly! If you don't come out from there, I'll shoot without mercy! We need lights! Natsuhi, let's light them up! Battler, thinking quickly, took a large flashlight from the tool shelf alongside the door and used it to light the cut through the darkness Natsuhi was glaring into. But the light only shone on mechanical-looking piping and a door. The door had been left open a small crack, and it was obvious that someone had leapt through there in a hurry. Natsuhi, where does that door go? Genji, where does that door lead to? The courtyard. Like hell I let you get away, you damn bastard! Battler let out a war cry as he slammed out into the door. Cool air from outside suddenly rushed in. There were some thin, rough stairs leading up. Battler ran up them, shouting. Wait, Battler-kun! It's dangerous to be on your own right now! Natsuhi was also rushing up the stairs, chasing after Battler. They were in the courtyard. The courtyard of the mansion had been built strictly for lighting purposes, so it wasn't a very elegant place. Because it was surrounded on all sides, the air was calm and completely undisturbed, even though they could hear the sound of strong winds. There was only the gentle, sorrowful rain. As he ran through the cold and scattered raindrops, dashing up the stairs into the courtyard, Battler looked in every direction. Of course, the odds of him finding a suspicious silhouette just standing around nonchalantly were pretty much zero. Battler spun, looking around. He turned again and again. He kept spinning until he almost lost a sense of direction. He prayed that he would see the culprit somewhere in the scenery. There was no chance. All he saw as he spun was more and more of the mansion's heartless walls and windows. Furthermore, there were 2 entrances into the mansion from the courtyard, and neither of them were locked, because the courtyard couldn't be entered from the outside the mansion. The doors had been built without locks. He didn't know which one they had left through. He had to give up. Badler pounded the wall with his fist, swearing. Badler-kun, you mustn't run ahead by yourself. Badler-kun? Badler pressed his forehead against the wall, which he scratched at with his fingernails as he cried. Damn it! Damn it! Damn it! Anteva and Uncle Hideyoshi, and now Kanon-kun! You killed a full 6 people! That wasn't enough, so you had to kill 3 more! Are you kidding me? Are you fucking kidding me? Anteva and Uncle Hideyoshi were always kind and fun. I just met Kanon yesterday, but I'm sure I've gotten along fine with him. Why did you kill them? Why? Why? You know, when people die, they don't come back to life again, right? They're gonna quickly sprout up again like bamboo shoots. Why did you kill them? Why? Why? Ah! Badler was a boy who couldn't understand the feelings of pain and regret in a person's heart. Hang on. I think I need water. Give me a second. Okay, I'm better now. I can speak again. So he cried with all his strength. Natsui, who had always thought of Badler as a frank person, was a little surprised to find he had this delicate side. And at the same time, she understood how easily hurt the heart of a young person could be. So she held him. It's all right. I will definitely protect you, George-kun, Maria-chan, and Jessica. As a mother, and as the representative of the Ushiromiya family. Ah! Ah! Badler, after sobbing into Natsui's chest for a while, wiped his tears with a bitter smile, as though he had been like that the whole time, and tried to appear as though he'd cried more than enough already. Anyway, let's go back down for now. Protecting ourselves is a higher priority than finding the culprits. Tomorrow, the boat will arrive. If that happens, the police will come. And everything should be brought to light. There's no way the culprit can escape this island, no matter how much they struggle. That's right. When the police come. When the seagulls cry, the crime will be solved. When the seagulls cry. But for some reason, Badler felt a slight sense of uneasiness, as if the seagulls would never cry again. But that couldn't be true. When the typhoon passes, surely the lively seagulls will return to the harbor again. I returned to the boiler room along with Aunt Natsuki and told everyone weekly that we hadn't found anything. We heard that Dr. Nanjo and George Janicki had carried Kanonkun to the servant room. The servant room had a first aid kit and a sink, and could apparently function as a nurse's office. Kumasawa-san and Jessica had accompanied them. Stains from Kanonkun's blood remained on the floor. Judging by the large amount of bloodlust and the ruthless shape of the weapon that had fallen carelessly to the ground, I figured that Dr. Nanjo's treatment would probably end in vain. That weapon was doubtedly the same type that had been stuck in Aunt Tema and Uncle Hideyoshi's foreheads. But wait, isn't the demonic design on the handle a little different? There seemed to be some small differences in that part. Still, as far as their overall shape was concerned, the weapons were all of the same type. Though it had seemed brutal, we'd left the weapons stuck into Aunt Tema and Uncle Hideyoshi to preserve the crime scene. So this was the first time we were able to have a perfect view of the entire weapon. As we expected, the weapon was not bladed like a knife, but shaped like an ice pick. Or rather, a thin stake. And it had a spiral-shaped pattern, sort of like a drill. It looked like something that might be driven into the hearts of human sacrifices in some demonic ritual. Including the handle, it was 25 centimeters long. Half of that was the stake-shaped part, which was stained with deep red blood. The length of the blood-stained part made it clear just how deeply it must have penetrated into Kanonkun's chest. Paran, Natsuhi, and the rest didn't even look at the weapon, and instead stood in front of the incinerator, where the horrible stench was emanating from. They must have dragged out that thing which had been burning in the furnace. It was still smoldering and kept sending out dense waves of that awfully unpleasant smell. What could it be? Genji-san and Maria stared down at it. And Natsuhi probably couldn't stand to look directly at it. She kept shaking her head, her back to it. Ugh! If I thought nothing could surprise me after everything that happened, but this is... Ugh! I stood there for a while, moaning, with a rising urge to vomit. The true source of that unearthly stench was a scorched corpse that had been cooking inside the incinerator. The clothes, the surface of the body, and the hair were all hideously burned. That grotesque corpse was in a state where not the face, nor the age, nor even the gender could be guessed at. But when I thought about it calmly, I realized that a corpse appearing at this time could only be one person. It was grandfather, who had disappeared that morning, and whose whereabouts had been unknown. I believe it is most likely the master. I agree. That he would pass away in such a state. It's heartrending. But is there any proof that this corpse really is grandfather? It's burned so black you can't even tell what sex it is. Battler-kun, look at the feet. And Natsuhi, with her handkerchief over her mouth and her eyes averted, pointed and told me to look at the burned corpse's feet. Notice how there are 6 toes on each foot. Huh? Ah, you're right. Just as Genji-san had said, there were 6 toes on each foot. Each individual toe had looked so normal in its line that I hadn't noticed. The master was born with 6 toes on both of his feet. Consequently, the master was entrusted with the revival of the Ushinomiya family. I have heard that since long ago, cases of polydactyl were uncommon in the Ushinomiya family. It's probably hereditary. Polydactyly literally means many fingers. Because of a little mistake by God, when the person is born, one of their toes or fingers splits into 2, and the total number increases. But a big deal isn't usually made of polydactyly in the world at large. That's because it isn't a disease, just something people are born with. So while they are still babies, at about the time they turn 1-year-olds, they can be taken to the hospital and given surgery to make them normal. Even a child with polydactyly can be treated before they become aware, so they might not even remember it themselves. By the way, it seems that there's a possibility for this to occur in 1 out of every 2,000 babies. So, even though it's not usually seen, it isn't that rare at all. Speaking of which, I think Uncle Hideyoshi mentioned something to me long ago. Something about how even Toyotomi Hideyoshi, the man who unified Japan at the end of the Sengoku period, had 6 fingers in one hand. According to An Natsuhi, among the many Ushinomiya family heads, the ones most praised for their wisdom all had polydactyly. Because of that, when grandfather was born, his relatives were all excited at the thought that he might become another wise leader. And when the leading relatives all died in the Great Kanto earthquake, it was apparently argued that grandfather should be the one to restore the family, because of the auspicious sign of his birth. If grandfather hadn't disliked his position as the head so much, this 6th toe would have been pretty lucky for him. Come to think of it, I've heard about some country where it's believed people with polydactyly should be treated as gods and revered. This is beside the point, but it's fairly common in mystery novels for a corpse to be burned to hide its identity. Besides the point, but I guess that in grandfather's case, just toasting him wouldn't be enough. And grandfather's body was not simply burned. It was just like Kantema and Uncle Hideyoshi, and the thing that had been stabbed into Kanon's golden chest. One of those demon ice picks was stuck into his forehead. So let's check, because I heard a noise. Oh, whoops, I'm looking at the wrong thing. It's this. Yep, no longer missing, now dead. Burned in the incinerator, with a weapon resembling an ice pick sticking out of his forehead. The old sorcerer's wish vanished before it could be granted. He always knew that this was one of the possible results of his risky gamble. Poor guy. The head ring's not on his finger. So the letter last night was telling the truth. Father would probably be horribly disappointed. Natsuki-san let her head droop and close her eyes tightly. This room had also become a vital crime scene for us to hand over to the police. It was decided that we would leave grandfather's corpse here and lock the room, sealing it. It isn't clear when grandfather's corpse started burning in the incinerator, since, according to Genji, the strength of the flames hadn't been that strong. The body must have started burning a long time ago. So that stench could slowly creep out of the furnace and fill the room bit by bit, eventually pouring out and climbing up the staircase. Putting aside whether he was rare or well done, oh, Battler, you're so funny. Grandfather had been brought out, killed, and burned, even though he had started out locked away in the closed room created by his auto lock. There's probably no doubting this. However, according to Genji-san, the boiler room is usually locked. The possibility that someone outside our group had snuck in and committed the crime was overwhelmingly high. And there was also a good chance that this person was walking around with something like a master key. After all, the doors and windows throughout the mansion had been checked. But despite that, the culprit was able to strut around in the mansion freely. Does this crime confirm that a 19th person exists? There's still that contradiction, since they're trying to tout their existence without ever showing themselves once. Along with Kirie-san's chessboard theory, I've been using this contradiction to deny the existence of a 19th person. Keep trying. by spinning the chessboard around once more. The very fact that this crime scene makes it perfectly obvious that a 19th person exists means that the existence of the 19th person is even less plausible. As long as that 19th person doesn't show themselves in front of us. If the culprit could get grandfather out through the door sealed by the receipts. If they could kill Anteba and Uncle Hideyoshi from the other side of the door sealed by a chain. Then could they possibly go so far as to create a fictional 19th person through stage tricks and devices? If we still want to believe that the culprit is among the 18, then the list of subjects has grown very short. The four of us kids, Aunt Natsuhi, Genji-san, Komasawa-bachan, and Uncle Nanjo. One of these people has to be the culprits. Wait, we can't be sure of that. Just a second ago, we started doubting whether the corpse here was actually grandfather's, right? Maybe we can think of other bodies in the same way. For example, the first 6 all had their faces horribly smashed. Some of the bodies had kept enough of their faces for us to confirm who they were. That old bastard, for example, had lost his entire face as though the whole thing had been neatly peeled off. We only figured out which body was which by their clothes and surroundings. Did the culprit prepare a fake body beforehand and alter it to make it look like they died? Even though they were actually hiding somewhere after committing the crime? It may sound ridiculous, but it wouldn't be an impossible trick to pull off. It's too early to give in to this 19th person. No, this witch. Maria-chan, you mustn't stare so fixedly anymore. Come on, Badler-kun too. I'm worried about Kanon's condition, and we mustn't remain in a place like this any longer than necessary. Let us return. Oh. Maria didn't go out with everyone else, but remained in the boiler room. The thing she was staring so fixedly at probably wasn't grandfather's body, but the demon-sized pig sticking out of his forehead. It was probably the sort of item that an enthusiast couldn't bear to ignore. I tapped her on the head. Hey, Maria. What's Beatrice after? Is it all of her lives? Beatrice will revive very soon. At that time, none shall be left alive. How can you laugh at something like that? Do you think you're the only one who's safe? Why don't you feel like you're in danger? Why aren't you scared? Beatrice made a promise. She said she's gonna take me to the Golden Lands. It's a wonderful place where you have no obligations. Everyone's always together. And everyone is always nice to everyone else. I'm looking forward to it. That time will come very soon now. Just what kind of person is Maria? I only know what Maria was like 6 years ago, when she was 3. She was once pure and obedient, a good kid. This new Maria 6 years later, and the Maria I knew, didn't seem to fit together. She was so obedient when she was 3 years old. Just who is she? This witch who calls herself Maria. To Maria who obstinately believes in the witch. This series of unsolvable crimes is proof that the witch actually exists. Every time something occurs that would be difficult for a human, it becomes a little harder for the rest of us to not believe in Beatrice. It must be an intense pleasure for Maria to see her relatives, who once firmly denied the witch's existence, start acknowledging that witch's existence one by one. Is that why she's in high spirits? Perhaps. Maria, let me ask this one more time. You'll probably answer the same anyway, but I'll ask just once more. Yesterday, you were given a letter in the rose garden. Who gave it to you? Ugh. Like I said, Beatrice. Adler still doesn't believe. Ugh. Maria only repeated what she had already said. Maria met with the 19 person, the witch. Was that really a 19 person? Or did one of the 18 just get her to say that? All that's certain is that Maria has been with the rest of us constantly, has always had an alibi, and hasn't done anything suspicious. Damn, I was so sure it was her. She's simply overjoyed at being made Beatrice's messenger. And certainly isn't the 19th person. Supposedly. That's right. I wonder what's written in the letter we picked up in Aunt Eva and Uncle Hideyoshi's room. And also you should still have it with her. Okay. That's gonna be it for tonight. Very short one, but we're gonna be doing this bit by bit. Because this finale, I believe, is like 6 hours long. The bot was pretty long. So let me save over here. I'm gonna save it over here just in case I somehow lose this bot again. But I don't think so. I think we're fine. I bet a lot of you were screaming at the screen when you saw certain things happen now that you have future knowledge. I commend you for not saying anything. Okay, I'm gonna stop the stream for a little bit just to split the bot. And then we're gonna start playing .hack. So I'll be right back.